Hello and welcome to the Empower Half Hour. I am Bradley W. Skinner. Excited to be here with you. And I've got I've got two amazing guests. Now, one of them you already know because he's already a co host of our show. Hey, Frank, how we doing?
Yes, sir. I'm doing. If I was any better, I would be Bradley Skinner. Let me tell you that. First of all.
Oh,
And I am so
you.
happy to see you here in person from, well, I'm in Southern New Jersey and you are somewhere in,
Southwest Wyoming.
yes, sir. So
Now,
God
I'm
bless you.
counting Frank as a guest today because we're actually talking about an exciting project that he is a part of. And we wanted to make sure that we are giving him that shout out. But it's our other guest that really makes today's episode special. So let's bring her on in, and I'm going to let Frank do the honors.
Hello, Michelle. Now, I was trying to
Hello.
figure out today, when did we actually meet? I know we worked in the same school district, but not at the same time.
That's correct. I think our paths crossed through Renaissance, through Jostens Renaissance. I think that's probably when we actually crossed paths in person. But we've been in the same circle with a lot of different people and a lot of different organizations. And so we are very familiar. I would say we're friends.
I mean, I would say not only friends, but co-authors. And one of the things that happened during the pandemic is that we already knew each other, but we actually co-authored a book and never came in contact with each other. It's kind of crazy when you think about it, but also it's one of those pluses that what happened to you during the pandemic. In a positive note, well, we wrote a book.
We wrote a book.
Yes.
And we didn't come in contact with one another, which is really kind of mind blowing when people think about it, because how do you write a book without actually coming into contact with somebody face to face? But we were able to do it. You reached out to me, I think, last December and right after Christmas, and you said, "Hey, we should do something." And I said, absolutely. I just jumped at the chance because to work with you, your passion for what you do and your positivity is just contagious and just kind of matches what I do in my life. And so I just thought, wow, this could be really great. So I was so thrilled to be a part of that because I have never had the experience of writing a book before. I've written a lot of articles, but not a book. So with your background and being an author twice before, you were able to really guide that process. And so the phone call was, what do you have in mind? And I'm a passionate teacher, that has stepped out of the classroom for I call it a quasi leadership position because I don't do any supervisory, but I'm in a leadership position nonetheless. And so I thought what I really want to do is help teachers stay passionate and fired up into their careers so they don't leave. And, off camera, I was just talking to Bradley about that. The statistic is that 50% of new teachers leave within the first 5 years. That's pretty staggering when you think about it. And
Yeah,
so the thought,
and let's hit the pause button for a sec. First of all, happy Thanksgiving. I don't normally wear a Santa hat, but tonight I am. And Bradley Skinner is one of my favorite passionate people that I've ever met in my life. And when you're talking about passion, I think you bring in the circle of that's our why. That's why we are educators. It's our calling. It's what we're supposed to do. It's where we will make the biggest difference in our lives and the lives of the people around us. So hit it, Michelle. Yeah, come on, bring it to us. How did you?
so,
What do you even
yeah,
think about when you think about writing a book? You have the stories.
So we came from a really great blended approach, which is storytelling, which is always terrific because it just resonates with people. People love stories. And I noticed that when I would talk about teaching to people and I would start to tell them these stories about students, and they were like, oh my gosh, you are just so passionate about what you do. So it resonates with them. But then we really threw in some great strategies of pedagogy on how to, I say, hack the profession for the first 5 years so you get to the sweet spot. and really can enjoy what it is that you do. Because this first 5 years can be really challenging for most educators. There's a lot on their plate. So we want to keep them fired up. We want to keep them fired up long into their profession. We want to support them with good strategies and advice on how they can connect with people that will help them through this process. And we also want to reinvigorate some people who maybe have been in the classroom a really long time and they're feeling like they're hitting that wall. So having people read this book as well, they've said to us, I know Frank has talked to people and they said, you know what, it validated and it reminded me of what I forgot. And so I think it's a book for everybody, but we are really excited because the intent was to impact educators in a positive way so that they would remain passionate and give their very best to the kids. And that's how it came to be. And that's what this is. It's Fired Up Teachership. We did a sequel to Frank's book called Fired Up Leadership. And so I really hope that people are going to see it for the resource that it is and also just love the stories.
And there's so much there that I don't know if we have enough time to talk about it, but teachership is leadership. And when I was doing the research for Fired Up Leadership, I never realized how many educators never looked in the mirror and saw themselves as leaders. And it's not position, it's not popularity, it's choice. You take Bradley Skinner, first of all. I mean, Bradley is one of the most amazing people I've ever met in my entire life, first of all. But when he and I met and he was sitting in the first row, we were doing that thing called climate and culture. It just connected because people don't understand how much of a relationship that you have between leadership and teachership. And I got to give Michelle all the credit for coming up with that phrase, that term, teachership. When she first said, hey, how about Fired Up Teachership? I'm like, whoa, hello. That was a perfect marriage. And Bradley, come on, give us something, man, because you know how that leadership and that educatorship and that teachership just comes together because you come from a family of educators. Well, at least
fortunately, yeah, we sure do. And I think you really make a good point about the fact of how often teachers don't look at themselves as leaders, but really they are, especially within their own buildings for those students, how important it is to have that person that they can talk to, that they can relate to, that they know is that champion for them, that there's going to go to bat for them. And a lot of times teachers, I think we get in that realm of, hey, we're just doing what we do. We're in our classroom, we're doing our job. But there's so much leadership within that we undersell a lot of times what it is that we're actually doing and how we're helping those students really prepare for their own futures. And I want to talk to you too about this because I saw this today. Take a look at this quote. It says, the national teacher shortage is a funny way of saying that the USA has made a passion-driven job so ungodly inhospitable that even people who just care about teaching, not the money, don't even care about teaching anymore. And that's something that we've been talking about for months, that we were going to really start seeing that teacher shortage, that it was going to be some hardships out there, that people are leaving, just as Michelle, as you said, that we're having those young teachers are leaving for different careers. They're seeing how difficult teaching can be today, and they're making different choices, and we're losing great educators because of it. So tell us a little more about how your book helps combat that.
Yeah. So I actually really want to have this conversation with as many people as I can. So anybody who's listening that does a podcast or an interview or an article that wants to talk about this, this impending teacher shortage, the looming teacher shortage that is now not looming anymore. It's here. What can we do? Because we know we've been anticipating having this teacher shortage for a long time, and people kept saying, oh, I don't think it's for real. Well, it's here, it's now. And COVID really pushed it and accelerated it because many veteran teachers left teaching because they couldn't do the remote learning and all of the different stressors that went with it. And when they could go, they did. And young teachers were being saddled with having to remote teach and live teach at the same time. And the workload became incredible. And they thought, do I really want to do this for the rest of my life? So this is a really big conversation that we need to have. And as much as I'm excited and really passionate about teachers and education, we can't just ignore this. It is a reality that we are facing in this country and probably worldwide from what I am reading as well. So how does the book help? And I think that that's such a great question, because we really do, Frank and I, from an administrative and teacher perspective, go into how can you do the job and do it well without sacrificing yourself so much that you want to leave. And we talk about balance. We talk about, just balance work life and how important it is to establish that. We talk about who's in your circle. How do you surround yourself with people that help lift you higher as opposed to just pull you down, the negative people that tend to, sit in the faculty room and just kind of, talk about everyone and everything that's wrong. So we talk about that. We also talk about how do you navigate all of the responsibilities that you have as a teacher and what you can control and what you can't control. And I think that is a really important point in trying to get people to understand teachers by nature are, like Frank said, they're leaders, but they may not have titles, but they're very autonomous. They like to be in charge and in control. And they have to ease up a little bit on themselves to understand what they can and cannot control so that they don't burn out as a result of it. So there's a lot of different strategies on how you can navigate the profession and still find the joy in it without losing yourself and saying that this isn't for me. And then the other thing,
let's stop. I'm stopping you right there. That word joy.
Yeah.
Okay, joy. And I see Shannon Moore from California. She's tuning in tonight. She is one of the most amazing people that I've never met. Hello? Think about that. And when you talk, and Michelle, when you talk about, our paths to where we are now, you have taken a totally different path than I have, because you knew, from what I read in the book, that you knew early on you wanted to be an educator. Me, I didn't. And we talk about that, different paths that people we've known and that we have taken that are totally different from each other. And Bradley can chime in on that too, because his path has been totally inspiring to the rest of the world.
I think we forget that it's okay to have fun as educators. Yet I know there's so much work. There's so many responsibilities.
Hello.
The world is crazy, but sometimes you just need to stop and have fun. And Frank was laughing about this earlier today. For those of you who don't follow me on social media, first off, you should be.
And they should. What's your handle?
Absolutely.
At Bradley W. Skinner. Let me make sure it's
and
up here for you. There you go. There we are. So this week, we know that so often we do dress up days or spirit days for students, and sometimes you hope that teachers participate. So we decided we're going to do the opposite. We're going to do a surprise dress up day where just the teachers participated and just surprise the students with it. So we had Happy Hanksgiving, where we all dressed up as random Tom Hanks characters, and it was hilarious. The students loved it. They were going to their next class to see, what film did that teacher dress up as, or who did they pick? And it was fun to see the way that teachers put some outfits together, what films that they wanted to represent, and then just a way to just have fun. And it was awesome.
I think that was an incredible idea, because the kids were so surprised that you were acting like kids. And I think that puts the joy back into it. And, I spent 32 years as a classroom teacher, and I always had music as they entered the room. My classroom always had decorations. I was a Spanish teacher, so it had, the papelitos hanging. It just was a vibe of come in. And, there was real work that was happening. There was structure, there was transitions and procedures, and students knew that they weren't disrespectful, but they loved being there. And I kind of have this funny story that I had a student who he had a lot of challenges in life, and he was failing my class. And this is, he was in 9th grade, and I said to him, hey, whatever the student's name was, I said, listen, why don't you go to guidance and see if you can't get into a study hall? And he looked at me in horror and he said, why would I do that? And I said, well, you're failing and you're not going to get the credits. And so you can come back next year. And he goes, I love this class. And I go, but dude, you have a 10. And he was like, but I'm okay with that. And I was like, okay, then hang out for as long as you want. And it was really no reflection on me, or, he was just really having a tough time at home. And there were some other extenuating issues, but he didn't want to leave that classroom because that's where he felt good. And so that's, if I had time to tell a young teacher what I think that they need to know, is that give yourself a break and do what you love. I mean, of course, you have to be accountable. Of course, we need to teach the curriculum. But at the end of the day, the students are going to remember how you made them feel. They're not going to remember all the content. So I was just visiting a student. He's in the book. He's 33, just had his first baby. His first baby with his wife, and he has a little boy from his other marriage. And he said to his son, who's 13, he said, this is Dad's teacher. And he said, remember, I told you that I don't remember everything she taught me, but she made such an impact on me. And, and that's an incredible feeling. So Frank and I want teachers to last long enough in that profession that they have those stories to tell. Because once you have those stories, you're hooked. It's
sometimes, and you know what? Sometimes we are our worst enemies. For example, I talk a little bit about this in the book, is that my oldest daughter, her IQ is probably like 50 points higher than mine. And she's an avid reader and writer. And she started out in a education curriculum. When she came back after her first semester, her teacher said, her name is Frankie Maria Reneski, why are you going to be a teacher? Hello? So they were discouraging her from entering the profession as an educator. Hello? So why would you ever do that? And it wasn't just one, it was 2 or 3 of her teachers said that to her. You could make a lot more money doing something else. I mean,
Sure.
That broke my heart when she told me that. So when we talk about your why, Michelle, which is in the early chapters of our book, go ahead. Come on, hit me with that. Come on, Michelle.
Oh, me. So when we talk about our why, it has to be about the kids, right? So it has to be about impact and making meaningful relationships. And it's funny because I know, Frank, that's a buzzword for you. It comes into every episode of Empower half hour that you have, which is relationships. It's building relationships. And I love that, because I don't think that I can ever talk about teaching without it. But one of the things that is one of the quotes in here is that relationships are not transactional. They're just not. It's, it's something that they're foundational. It's not about just passing one another. It's about in depth. It's about loving one another. So that is the why that I have always, is to play a small part in changing the trajectory or enhancing the trajectory of a student's life in a way that makes them succeed and find their true potential. And so it's not just imparting knowledge. That's, everybody thinks that that's your job, is to stand up and just teach and give them knowledge. And for me, I think it's about connecting with them as a whole human being and letting them discover who they are. And if I can be so bold as to read a couple of things, because I love the chapter.
Please do, and give us the Amazon link to order the book, but go ahead.
I think one of the things that really kind of jumped out at me is something that Frank would say, which is, how do you want people to talk about you at the dinner table? And that is something that when we stop and we think about that, what do you want them to say about you? And so for me, I reached out to some students and I said to them, what do you think my legacy is to you, to other students? And I'm going to read a couple of them just because this is not about Frank. It's not about me. It's about the power and the control that every teacher has of impacting a life. And so one of my students said, you gave me your time when no one else seemed to care, and you stood by me all the way through my last days of school. You made me feel loved, important, smart, valued, and funny as, I'll leave that one. And you had me really thinking I could be a comedian. Your legacy was teaching those students who couldn't learn. You taught them. And then leaving your legacy behind is touching people's lives in ways you couldn't even comprehend. Leaving your legacy is leaving parts of yourself in others that you trust will carry the messages you brought to them. People come into our lives at a point that we need them the most. And a lot of them end up being temporary. But someone like you is someone who stays with us for life. She may meet her students in the classroom, but she continues to teach them forever. So when we talk about legacy, it doesn't get better than that. I don't know what other career you could compare to that. There's, to me, what other career makes you feel like that? I mean, I'm sure a doctor who saves lives. Yeah. But for me, an educator, we impact them at every level, depending on what grade they're in. We share the joy in who they become, right? So that's
amazing.
That's what we do. And that's what we hope other educators will be reminded of, because some people have lost that. Some people have lost that spark. And we hope that we kind of challenge them to dig deep and find that spark again, but also know that you are the variable in that classroom, that you're the one that makes the difference on whether those students succeed or not. Now, some people would argue that, but I don't, because if I'm that passionate, I'm going to find a way. I'm going to find a way to make them succeed. And it may not be that year. It might take them more than that. I had one student who Spanish 3 or Spanish 1, 3 years in a row because she wasn't ready, because lots of things were going on. But when she got it, she finally got it. But guess what? We're still in contact. She's had a rough ride, but just recently she shouted me out on a show that she does for recovering addicts, and I was blown away. So it may not be right then, but you do impact them.
That is
so
fantastic.
that's it. So the book is at Amazon, Fired Up Teachership. I keep turning it this way, that way. I don't know if you guys can see it, but it is there. So you can order it on Kindle, you can order it in paperback, and you can order it in hardback, which is kind of cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, how about that? Yeah, and okay, so let's bring this full circle. I mean, what you're talking about is what every educator feels, but we need to keep people in education, because the facts are, as you said earlier, 50% are leaving the profession. So how do we keep them in there? How do we keep people in the most amazing, in the most important profession ever? Because, hey, we may not be that medical doctor or that lawyer or that person that goes out to another country, but we are the people that inspire those people. And I
Absolutely.
went into education. I never thought of it as I'm going to be a great teacher, but I always thought of it as I'm going to be that great difference maker. And people like Bradley, people like Michelle, people like Darren, people like Shannon, people like Melissa. Are you kidding me? This is what we do, because sometimes You find your calling, and sometimes your calling finds you.
It sounds like a perfect segue into our final thoughts.
No way.
Instead of just giving our final thoughts today,
already.
isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that is
So,
great.
Frank, you brought up a great question. How do we keep them from leaving? So let's actually, for our final thoughts today, share your top tip. What is that number one thing that you recommend to our listeners, to our audience, other educators, that they can do?
Well,
Let's see who gets to kick it off. Oh, I guess it's going to be me.
Bradley.
All right. Here's my tip. Your school needs to have a solid and effective and efficient mentorship program.
Yes.
If you are just assigning new teachers, just somebody down the hall because it's a task or it's a chore, and their job is to make sure they know how to make copies or where the coffee pot is, you are not doing that justice. That is not what a mentorship program is. Mm-hmm. Just as students need to have that teacher that's going to be their champion, that's going to go to bat for them, new teachers need that as well. They need to have a solid, effective, wonderful teacher that's going to be there to care for them, to pick them up, to check in on them. It's got to be far more effective than what most of the time what we're actually doing.
I think that's awesome. That's probably one of the ones that I would have listed first. And often schools just say, who wants to mentor? And there might be a little paycheck involved. And some of the people that sign up to do it are not the people that should be doing it. Or they just kind of go through the motions because nobody else wanted to do it. And they do those new teachers a major disservice and they kill their joy. So I agree with you. It's got to be an effective program. It's got to be one that people really feel passionate about making sure that they are taking care of the new staff so that they are able to navigate the muddy waters of the first couple of years. I would agree.
How about this? Let's have fun. We talked about it at the top of the show, and we have a lot of bureaucracy in education. And believe me, that's where position gets separated from leadership. When you walk in that door for the first time or across that threshold, you are a leader. So make that choice and act accordingly because you are smart, strong, beautiful, kind, and loved. So act accordingly. I appreciate everybody out there in my PLN and beyond. And you have made me a better person. And I hope to make you guys better people. And Bradley Skinner, nice seeing you. Michelle, what a wonderful co-author. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Michelle. It's been an absolute pleasure. Can't wait to get my hands on that book. And thanks for taking time out of your day and your holidays here to be able to join us.
Yeah, everybody have a wonderful Thanksgiving. If you're celebrating, be thankful for so much. Frank talks about when we both talked about hitting our feet hitting the floor in the morning, having gratitude when we wake up. And I think that is so important more now than ever, but it changes how you see the day. And I think that if we can do that tomorrow, because it's Thanksgiving, but every day, I think we could just, we could rock this world. It'd be really great.
Absolutely. Thanks everybody for tuning in to the Empower Half Hour. For Michelle and Frank, I'm Brad Skinner. We'll see you next week or whenever we are back after the holidays.
Yeah, everybody enjoy. Thanks so much.